What false fact did you believe in for way too long? When I was a kid, my mom always told me that all the nutrition in bread is in the crust, so she wouldn't have to keep cutting it off. Found out that wasn't true when I was 20, after bringing it up to some friends. I still get crap for that. 30 here. Thought that was true until this moment. I pointed out to a bud of mine something he held as truth for like 20 plus years. If you boil water twice, it can kill you. His mom always screeched at him to fully empty a kettle before boiling more water, or when cooking once it's brought to a boil, then down to a simmer, you're not allowed to bring the heat up again. Too much boiling will kill you. A quick Google search proves this is wrong, but also where the tiny grain of truth spun his mom's brain out of control. Things like fluoride won't boil off. So if you boil the same water or keep adding to boiled water, you will just concentrate these chemicals until you get a lethal dose. Except in order to do that you'd have to boil 100s of 1000s of gallons of water and drink it all in a single sitting. Which you would never do because drinking that much safe water could kill you a few times over. This could have been based on the advice not to use reboiled water when making baby bottles. That the black market was an actual market you could go to. I thought it was in Egypt or something, and would have black colored stalls and sell crazy stuff. I thought it opens up at night and sells all the weird crap, from illegal drugs, guns, all the way to voodoo dolls and bat fangs. Oh boy. Wishing on stars was a real thing. When I was about 4 or 5, my dad overheard me wish on a bright star that the next time we went out to eat I would get a huge tub of vanilla ice cream. My fav. A couple days later we went to the restaurant. He was regional manager of Hooters Mayo, and out pops this waitress with one of those fancy tin things that you always see in gourmet restaurants and movies. You know, where they take the top of it off when you set it down. She sat it in front of me, pulled the top off, to reveal a big Olay tub of vanilla ice cream. My little mind was blown and I don't think I had ever been so excited. I would tell that story to prove my point until I was like 12 years old, lol. Your dad sounds like he was an awesome guy. That spiders have big territories, so if your father killed the enormous spider in your room it was safe to go to bed, because there would be no other spiders in the whole house. My mom told me if I ever killed any spiders, their families would want revenge and start invading the house. I had no clue that pickles and cucumbers were the same thing. I went to grow my first garden and commented that you can't find pickle seeds anywhere. Facepum. I love to tell people the fake trivia fact that pickles grow at the bottom of the Dead Sea, and when they are ripe they float to the surface, so you just need to pick them up with a boat. It's also the only thing that's alive in the Dead Sea. When I was younger I believed that in different countries a version of myself was there. In France there would be a French version of myself living a regular life. Just like those cartoons where the character has a family reunion with all of his ethnic versions. I at least know Homer Simpson and Ned Flanders did it. That the doctor tied a knot in your umbilical cord when you're born, and the knot determines if you have an innie or outie belly button. My granddad loved dark chocolates. He always told my dad that dark chocolate is poisonous to children so he wouldn't take any. The trouble is, he never corrected him. So, when my dad was 23 and at a friend's house, their toddler got hold of an after 8. Cue my dad leaping from the couch, shouting no and slapping the chocolate out of the toddler's hand. Wah hey, TY for the awards. He saved that toddler's life. My buddy once told me that the blue ribbon from PBR was for winning an event in a beer competition way back in the day, and that the category they won was beer that tastes the most similar cold as warm. I have told so many people this little fun fact over the years and only recently decided to Google it, yielding no results other than the realization that I'm a dumbass. Let's just look at as people thought you were making the best joke and just a god at deadpan. That I couldn't poo without being butt naked in the bathroom. You would be surprised how many naked poopers there are. It was tough for the longest time, like first 24 years or so. Needed to do it at home or in a leisurely space. Big gaps in American bathrooms didn't make it any easier when others made laser eye contact with the naked pooper. Such a strange habit looking back at it. When I was learning to drive, my dad told me that if you go over 75, the tires can overheat and explode. I believed that for way longer than I want to admit. That's true if your tires only have a L speed rating, but pretty much everything these days has at least a H rating, which is 130 miles per hour. I grew up in the Midwest, so sometimes when we drove we would see hay bales. I asked my grandfather once what they were for, and he explained they were to feed animals, and they collected the hay into big bales so they would fit into the cannon. This hay bale cannon, he explained, would launch hay bales to nearby fields, artillery style. That way we could round up all the hay in one spot and send it where it's needed. It sounded very plausible at 5 or so, and took me years to figure out was just some off the cuff joke that bastard got me with. That crap is hilarious. Please make a hay bale cannon. It's your life mission. When I was a kid I thought zigzag rolling papers were little Bibles, cause the dude on the front looked like Jesus to me. This is so adorable. That your blood is blue inside your body and it only turns red when it's oxygenated. I only learned last year that it's a myth. God, how stupid I feel ever thinking that was real. Too many middle school science teachers believe this is true. Unfortunately some high school science teachers as well. The myth continues. When I was a kid, I thought that when the doctor diagnosed you with something that they literally gave you the condition. I couldn't understand why people went to the doctor. This reminds me of another redditor who thought that gunpoint is the name of a place which people were too stupid to go to since they kept reading so and so held hostage at gunpoint. Banana nut muffins were made from a banana nut, just a type of nut called banana nut. I was 17 years old when I learned they were made from bananas and nuts. Not a false fact, but something I believed was correct. For the longest time, I thought that the rain falling on the windshield of a car filled the reservoir bottle for the windscreen wipers. Felt pretty dumb when I learned that didn't happen, but I wish that was a thing. If you trim your hair it'll grow faster, my dad. Like bruh, it grows from the roots not the ends. Why did I believe it? I think the original truth to this is that it could keep your hair fuller if you trim it. Less broken ends, less snarls and knots when you brush it. My daughter believed sometime after you die and are buried, you become a zombie, and then something else happens, and then you go to heaven. It wasn't like she was old when we told her the truth, but for some untold period of time she was going to Sunday school and also believing that zombies were part of the equation. She's a teenager now and doesn't go to church but also doesn't like to go into graveyards, so I'm not sure how this really resolved itself. I suppose in fairness, Jesus did die then get back up. I thought milk was cow pee until I was like 8. IDK it just made sense to me and I never questioned it. Strawberry milk is from pink cows, chocolate milk from brown cows, white milk from the white cows. My dad told me as a young child that the Great Wall of China was actually built to keep rabbits out of all their crops. I told people that for years. LOL. There was an ad on Australian TV where a kid was asking his dad about the Great Wall of China. It was an ad for broadband internet. The dad said it was because of rabbits. That women have one more rib than men. I spent 10 years being fed that this was true by the church because Adam gave his rib to Eve so she could bear children. I looked really stupid in anatomy class. I believed this too, but mostly because I actually do have an extra rib on one side, so I had evidence to back it up. Turns out I'm just weird. Not me, but my sister is born on the 31 of December, so until her 5th birthday I think, our father and I told her that all the fireworks were to celebrate her birthday. Story time. My parents were driving me up to my soon-to-be university for orientation, and kept pointing out all the things I could check out around town. Mom, look, hang gliding lessons. You could give that a go. Me, no thanks. I don't think I could hang on that long. My parents started laughing so hard they had to pull over. Apparently you get strapped in for hang gliding. I thought Wisconsin was somewhere on the mid-Atlantic coast. I grew up less than an hour from the Wisconsin state border. You're not the first person I've heard this from. My dad's family legit thought that Wisconsin bordered Florida back in the 80s when he told them he was moving from Chicago to Wisconsin, which is like 50 miles away. They all live in Pennsylvania. So I am Hindu and we have lots of God, but every family worships few gods more than other depending on their beliefs. Now I lived in a city where there was Christmas, Eid, other religious festival very common everywhere, and my parents made sure we celebrated everything and told us stories about it. For a very long time I had no concept of religion at all. I thought everyone just worships their main gods every day and then celebrates all festivals and would know about all gods and festivals. OMG, I was a good 10-year-old when I realized how brutal the religion thing is in world, and I was so lucky to have such amazing parents. I thought there was an abundance of kind farmers that took in elderly dogs when suburban life was no longer an option. My parents never even used that trick on me, but I'd picked it up somewhere and it made me so happy to know that dogs were so often given a nice farm life to finish out their days. Didn't realize until like junior year of high school. My mother-in-law used to tell my husband when he was growing up that he was allergic to rabbits. As he grew older, he'd write in rabbits on all his doctor forms asking about allergies. Finally had a doctor question it when he was in his late 20s. He confronted his mom about it and she was like, "Oh, I just said that so you'd stop asking for one as a pet." Poor guy went a couple decades thinking he had a real allergy. That recycling on the consumer level actually had any real meaningful impact. Most things don't actually get recycled that we send in these days, and major companies would need to make major change to have any real impact. Yes, this is a total bummer. I feel like I have been duped for the last 40 years. What a kick in the junk. That miners couldn't vote in national elections, and I assumed it was from the gases underground or something else they were inhaling. It wasn't until I read it and realized it was miners, not minors. Work hard and employers will look out for you. Chameleons change color according to their surroundings. They do not. They change based on temperature, mood, mating availability etc. But cephalopods do. They can change their color and texture to camouflage to become almost literally invisible from above. They can even mimic stripes, spots or any other surface they want to. I thought burning incense produces harmless scented air, but it actually can cause lots of lung issues, and even lung cancer. Why it was encouraged to burn inside rooms during the 80s and 90s, and maybe still now, I have no idea. My dad told me the crusts on bread were made with worms, and I made my mother cut the crusts of bread for a solid 5 years afterwards. That if your Tootsie Pop wrapper had the image of the Native American pointing a bow and arrow at a star, you'd get a free Tootsie Pop. Euthanasia as a kid I thought was euthanasia. So much of the protests and talk on TV made zero sense, and I just didn't pick up on it till I saw it actually written down. I was like 16 when I figured it out. Just imagining a group of people yelling at some kids for existing in China is freaking hilarious. That Columbus was the only one that thought the earth was round. Everyone knew the earth was round. They wouldn't fund his expedition because no one knew the Americas was there. He was claiming that he could sail across the Atlantic and all the way across the Pacific and the supposedly ocean space where the Americas were to get to the East Indies. It was a reasonable thought to say frick no. He simply got really fricking lucky. Also, he was a genocidal sociopath that even Spaniards of the day thought was over the top. OMG this. I had an argument with a retired teacher because he said that Columbus did it to prove that the earth was round, and I said no. They have known for 1000s of years it was round. Columbus just did it for a trade route. As a kid I thought my parents were not couple but just two friends living in the same house to take care of us. My enlightenment happened when my gay childhood friend who's a bit older than me told me that our parents actually do the kissing, and when I didn't believe it, she told me to ask my elder sister, who in my disbelief agreed with her. Well, I don't know where I got the idea, but my father looks too old for my mom. He is 15 years older, and I've never seen them being affectionate to each other. Two bros living in the same house to take care of some kids sounds like a good idea. TBH. I'd totally do it with my BFF if I had the money. That horse show crabs had poisonous tails like stingrays and could sting you with them. I literally thought this until yesterday. When I was a child, mom kept saying that my birth father died, which is why I never saw him. But when I was about 10, I asked my mom where his grave was. Turns out that my birth father ran away the moment he got mom pregnant, and we didn't hear from him ever since. His family was apologetic about it, but I don't really care about it anymore. I got an awesome stepdad who loves us, so that's good enough. I thought hippos were the female versions of rhinos. Mice were the female version of rats. Sheep were female versions of goats. Swans were female versions of geese. I also thought Mother Goose of the fairy tale mythos was the leader of all the storks that carried babies to people. I was a small child, but people let me believe all of this till I was old enough to be embarrassed by the correction. I believed throughout my whole childhood that if you died you would just wake up in a hospital thanks to TV shows, movies. So by my logic, if you got hit by a car or jump off a building you would just wake up in a hospital bed automatically, and that's the worst of it. A relative died and I legitimately thought after the funeral we could pick them up at the hospital the next few days or something. I didn't get what everyone was crying about. I'm lucky to be alive, TBH. That the walk buttons at the crosswalk worked. In NYC they are placebo buttons and do not do anything. All the stoplights are on timers. That tongue have zones that each interprets different taste. We were told so by teacher on elementary schools. I also remember asking few specific questions about certain biological processes, such as why frying or boiling egg makes it solid. The teacher couldn't answer the way simple Wikipedia query did later. When I was a kid, my uncle told me that chickens lived in silos, grain silos. I was in the car with my mom in the countryside and we passed a huge silo, and I contemplated aloud how many chickens it held. My mom looked at me like I was insane. I was 14. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.